Welcome back to the Bold Call Fantasy Football Podcast. We are taking a look at rankings today. We're looking at the quarterback position specifically. We're going to give you the top 12 quarterbacks for the 2023 fantasy football season. I've got Alan Seslowski from RotoWire here. He's with me for the whole rankings kit. We're going to do every position here, so stay tuned for all of that. But today we're focused on the quarterback position. And Alan, in general, just let me broad base this for you a little bit. What is your theory about the quarterback position in fantasy football? Are you a take quarterback in the first couple rounds guy? Are you a wait on quarterback guy? You know, for years, fantasy football was defined by waiting on the quarterback. And how does super flex fall into the mix for you?
Yeah, no, you said it right that the key to fantasy football, especially in your home league, was waiting on the quarterback till, the 10th round, the 13th round, because, a decade ago, it didn't really matter if you reached up for Peyton Manning. The difference between taking like Phillip Rivers 5 rounds later or just another pocket passer was a few fantasy points. But what you talked about is that it's a little bit different in the last couple of years, and specifically this year with the running quarterbacks. You have Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and there's a bunch of others we're going to discuss. But as those guys separate themselves a little bit, we've seen the fantasy football markets push these guys up. And, you're going to see quarterbacks go in the first round in some of your even single quarterbacks leagues. Not forget Superflex. Certainly the top tier and maybe even 2 is going to be gone in the first 50 picks. So that's in the first 5 rounds. So if you want to have an elite quarterback on your team, you used to be able to wait to the 3rd, 4th round. Now, you have to pay up in a top 20 pick. So overall, quarterbacks are more expensive. So I guess what we need to sort out, Geek, is wait on quarterbacks still the way, or are we going to buy into that expensive market?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've been in the best ball streets. I've been in the startups, not startup, but like in the mean streets of all the various. I've been, I'm drafting nonstop, as you know, and as are you.
Best ball's a little different, though, because even in single quarterback best ball, you need 2, sometimes 3 quarterbacks. So it's a little different than your managed lineup league.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I do think one thing that will be consistent, even in single QB leagues, is that you're seeing the top group, and we'll talk about our top trio here real quick. And actually, I'm going to say who they are. Like number 1, number 2, number 3 for me, Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen in that order. Josh Allen being 3rd for me. How do you order the top 3? And they're for me a tier in and of themselves. So how do you order that top 3?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same order as you, but it wouldn't bother me to have either one. I have them all 3 on the same plane. Mahomes was far and above the best one last year, but the year before, he was not. So they all have their, he doesn't run as much as Jalen Hurts and as Josh Allen. But as we know, he's got the highest yardage and passing touchdown upside, and he does add some with the run. He probably has the least appealing weapons of the 3 as well.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at the average fantasy points per game, that trio was separated by like less than a point between the 3 of them. So they absolutely fall as your top 3, and all 3 go. So part 2 of this question is all 3 go by the end of the 2nd round in almost any league type that you're in. There is a thought coming out of last year with so many quarterbacks that failed to produce, failed to help you win your league. People are like, you know what? You know who won? The guy who had Mahomes.
Yeah. Would you take one of the? Are you going to be shopping in the first 2 rounds for quarterback, or are you out on the elite guys in your most important leagues?
I'm probably out on those guys in the first couple of rounds.
Yeah.
So for me, understand this, and this is a really important. This is the strategy component of the quarterback position. Listen, I treat it differently. If it's super flex, that's pick 1, 2, and 3. No question. And I am getting a quarterback in my first round in super flex when I need to.
It's pick 1 through 8 or 1 through 9 in seasonal, right? I mean, we're taking Deshaun Watson at pick 9 in a super flex league.
In super flex, yeah, 100%. So those guys are gone. But when we're talking what most people play in, which is like your standard, ideally PPR league, we want everybody to be in super flex, but they don't. They aren't, right? In your PPR league that you're going up against your buddies, or even in a best ball, I will not end up if I don't take the first rounder, and I'm going to tell you why. It's very simple. Because the wide receiver / running back that I can get at the end of the second round, and his name is probably,
Chris Olave,
or
Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith. These types of guys, you cannot replicate that later on in the draft. And so when I'm getting the 5th or 6th quarterback 2 rounds later, the wide receiver that you're giving up on is like Jerry Jeudy or somebody less good that you're less excited about, Mike Evans.
Yeah, there might there's 2 ways to think about it. If you're just in a 12-person contained league, I think that's pretty good strategy. But if you're in, if you've said best ball, like if you're playing underdog, best ball mania, or an overall contest, I think that if you can get Pat Mahomes and Kelsey, if you can get Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, if you can get A.J. Brown or Smith and Jalen Hurts, I think that makes a little bit more sense to go into the picks 10 through 25.
I'll give a plug for NFFC, which has the Beat Alan Seslowski League in it as one of those. And yes, I totally agree. In the best ball format, or in formats where it's a greater tournament, right, it's a different approach because you do want correlation and stacking.
That's because the DFS part of it.
Yeah, that's the DFS lineup. So you really need to have correlation stacking. But in your standard league, no, for me, I'm not taking those guys as much as I love them. And I'm going to tell you why, Seslowski. Because in tier 2, hanging out 2 rounds later, and I'm going to give you my 3 quarterbacks in tier 2. I've got a 3-pack in here, and it might not be the same as yours. So we got tier 1, Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen. My tier 2 for me in this order: Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence. He'll burn your food like Florence. He'll run up in your crib like his name is search warrants. Trevor Lawrence.
You don't have Justin Herbert in that tier?
No. Okay. And you'll see the tier 3. So do you put Herbert in the same group as Lawrence, Fields, and Lamar? Because those 3 are runners, and we get away from runners after this tier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have Herbert in that tier as well. Mostly because, and again, I can't disagree with you. My colleague Jim Coventry has Fields as QB4 also. You 2 are the only 2 that I know that have that. That's a pretty good call right there.
Both calls.
There it is.
Here, guys, this is another thing. I love that you just mentioned that. Sorry to interrupt. You're getting bold calls here, guys. You're going to see across our positional rankings, me and Seslowski, we talk about this stuff all the time. We're fucking one brain. But you're not getting generic stuff here. We are going out on limbs, and if you don't want to go out on a limb, you could follow the ADP on whatever you do. But we're going out on limbs here. Last season, me and Al, we told you Jalen Hurts will be your top guy. He was going QB 7 or 8. A year before that, it was Josh Allen. We've hit the right sexy QB on the bold call for years in a row.
Not to skip around, because I want to come back to why I have Herbert in there, but who do you think is, just lightning round, like who is that QB 7 through 15 that you think could finish as a top 1 or 2 QB this year? I'm just curious.
I mean, if it's not Fields, because we're calling that a cheat, right? Because to me, it's Fields.
Right.
So if we're not allowing Fields, my guy after that is Lawrence. But if I need to go beyond the top 12 for the true shocker, my top candidate to finish top 6 outside the top 12 is Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I'm down with that. I like Daniel Jones. But back to Herbert, why I like him as the QB4, or actually I probably have him as 5. I have Lamar as 4. But it's a similar reason. Both Lamar Jackson in Baltimore and Justin Herbert in LA have had significant offensive coordinator upgrades. Todd Monken, the famous 30 for 30 with Jameis Winston when he threw over 30, threw a lot of touchdowns, and then
that was the amount of production, just fantasy goodness. I'm getting sucked in, but I also feel it's a little bit of hopium. Like what he did with Tampa is not necessarily what will happen again in Baltimore.
Maybe not, but he's saying it's going to. If it actually happens, who knows? But you like that Todd Monken is saying we're going to take Lamar Jackson and bring him back to the Louisville days when he had 4 wide. We're going to throw this thing. Lamar Jackson has always said to everyone, I can throw the football. He just hadn't had a chance with Greg Roman there as the offensive coordinator. Now they draft Zay Jones in the first round. Everybody liked him. They you may not love Odell Beckham, but they signed him to a $15 million contract.
Zay Flowers, by the way. I love Zay Jones, too.
I've made that mistake before.
Easy one to make.
Thank you.
But I love me some Zay Jones also.
Zay Flowers, the brain fart there. And, everyone likes Mark Andrews as a receiver. And what Todd Monken said about Lamar Jackson is now when Lamar scrambles, he's going to be scrambling against 5 and 6 players, not 10. So you like that, and then Justin Herbert gets not Kellen Mond. What's the Dallas?
Kellen Moore.
Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
So it gets the former Dallas Cowboys offensive coordinator, who everybody liked as his offensive coordinator, as Mike McCarthy takes over play calling in Dallas. So that's an upgrade for that offense. And what they said was the one problem with Justin Herbert was he was throwing the ball short too much. So they're going to air it out. Justin Herbert had that rib injury last year. So I like the chances of Herbert and Lamar Jackson to be in that upper tier, but I'm not going to tell you that Justin Fields isn't the right answer. I mean, he was amazing when he got going last year.
I'll make the argument for Fields since you made the argument for Herbert there. And my argument for Fields is very simple. He was already doing enough with the legs, and it just reminds me of Hurts and Lamar the year before they broke out. He was already doing enough with his legs last year to be effectively an elite quarterback. Now, he averaged about 22 fantasy points per game last year, 21, with no wide receivers and no help at all. So my feeling is DJ Moore, the additional offensive weapons for that team, another year of maturing for Justin Fields, and he gets you just that little bit extra with the arm that puts him from, you're right. His ADP is 6th or 7th overall. He's going after Lamar. He's going after Burrow and Herbert in a lot of. I think he is absolutely above those guys. So, like, for me, I'm getting a lot of Justin Fields because I have him ranked so much higher than other people do.
I think that's a great call, and especially that Joe Burrow had been like the QB4. Now that this injury, and I'm sure Joe Burrow is going to be fine, but why buy like an open box of cereal off of the supermarket shelf when there's a perfectly new one right next to it, right? Like, I'm not taking that one. So I'm gonna take Justin Fields ahead of Joe Burrow if I'm drafting today. Now, if it's the same knee. Also, I had the calf strain. It's the same knee. I'm pretty sure it is that had the ACL tear, and those things like tend to linger, right? And this also basically assures you that Joe Burrow is not going to be doing any proactive scrambling in the first month of the season. I love Joe Burrow. I love the weapons, but I'm not going to take him ahead of Justin Fields, and I'll take him ahead of Deshaun Watson and Lawrence, though.
Absolutely. And again, so continuing on, I told you I had Trevor Lawrence. You just mentioned Trevor Lawrence. In this zone. I'm going to tell you what I like about Trevor Lawrence, and I think he might be just as good as any of these guys. Trevor Lawrence, from what I saw at the end of last season, he started to put together the whole Mahomesian package. And when I say the Mahomesian package, or I feel like Aaron Rodgers is the originator of this style of play. Mahomes is sort of the perfecter of the style of play. Like, it's not the Brady style, right? It's strategic scrambler, has the speed, much more of a thrower, but will get you the first down on 3rd and 13, will extend games that way, and will occasionally run one in when necessary. I have the tool. I'll use it when I need it, but I'm definitely looking to pass first, right? Aaron Rodgers almost perfected this early in his career. Scramble around. He would take off 13, 16 yards, first down. That is a difference maker for your team. I saw a lot of that from Trevor Lawrence last year. It just began. I really feel like I saw the sparks of a future superstar with Lawrence. I like him above Burrow and Herbert, which is crazy. I know.
Herbert, I think is a mistake, but I'm not going to, again,
you could be right. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm just saying, like, that's where I'm at right now.
It's not crazy. Yeah, no, it's not crazy because, you can build also, if you're someone that likes stacking, and what we mean by stacking is taking the receiver and the quarterback on the same team, does give you a little bit extra upside because those are correlating plays. I don't think you have to stack in a contained seasonal league, but if you like, both are gettable stacks. Lawrence, you could stack with Calvin Ridley in the 3rd or 4th round, or Christian Kirk a couple rounds later. And of course, Herbert, if you want to spend a pick on Keenan Allen, I'm not doing that this year, but Mike Williams a couple rounds later, I've been taking him when I've taken Herbert. So I think that it's where you rank these guys isn't as important as the tier break. So I think that we have agreed the top 3 guys are in a tier, and then there's a tier of about 6 guys after that. that we're comfortable taking as our top quarterback before we know there's a real teardrop.
Yeah, and I think the teardrop does happen after Deshaun. So let me just give my order of my personal order 7 through 9.
Start from the top.
Yeah.
Again.
So we started with Mahomes. We got Mahomes 1, Allen 2, Hurts 2, Josh Allen 3. I've got
teardrop. On that. So 1, 2, 3
teardrop. Right now, I've got Justin Fields number 4, Lamar Jackson number 5 overall, Trevor Lawrence number 6 overall for me. That leaves us with Herbert and Burrow 7 and 8 respectively. And I think you and I would both agree that maybe it's Deshaun Watson finishing up this tier, number 9, QB 9 overall. And we didn't see much from Deshaun. Tell me your thoughts on Deshaun for this upcoming season.
Right. And I think that Deshaun Watson, we both agree, is at the bottom of that tier.
Yes.
And it almost like
should be the next tier down, probably.
And it's a small space. It's like instead of being double space, it's single space, Deshaun Watson, because there's a little bit of uncertainty. So Deshaun Watson, still very relatively young. Was he 27, 28 years old? He came into the Cleveland Browns, wasn't allowed to practice all year because of the suspension. So he was just walking in cold to a new offense. He wasn't familiar with the receivers, didn't develop a chemistry or connection. The weather was kind of crappy. Now he's had a full offseason. So I'm sure people have short memories. The drama will be behind him. He'll be more confident, and he's got upgraded weapons. He still has Amari Cooper, who's a good NFL wide receiver. Elijah Moore's had who came over from the Jets, glowing camp reports. They drafted a rookie in Cedric Tillman. We both like the David Njoku. And Nick Chubb, I don't think anybody disagrees that Nick Chubb takes a lot of pressure off quarterbacks because he's one of the best runners in the NFL. Add all that up, and Deshaun Watson, I mean, for his career, was a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Some of the best yards per attempt, which is generally an excellent measure of a quarterback is accurate and can throw the ball downfield. If you're willing to give Trevor Lawrence like a mulligan for the Urban Meyer fiasco, I think that this is similar, and there is risk with him, which is why he's 9 or 10. If not, I think we would comfortably have him in the mix for the 4th through 5th, 6th quarterback. So
he might have jumped up into tier 2. Like we might be talking about Deshaun next year in tier 2. Deshaun also had a little bit of runs in him. He had a little bit of that Mahomesian style where with the great arm in his previous career. So yeah, I see it. But I think there's a little hopium.
We've seen it. We've seen it though with him, which is
we didn't see it last year though. Yeah.
But and again, I think we could tell ourselves a story as to why we didn't see it last year.
100%. But that's when we tell ourselves a story, we're hoping a little bit. So I think for me, this is an important strategic part. And a reminder, you are watching the Bowl Call Fantasy Football Podcast. I've got Alan Seslowski with me from RotoWire, and I'm Kevin Allen, aka The Geek from DFS Army. And this is the big ranking show. So write it down, right? We are going position by position here. We're starting with the QB position. So we are at the top 9. And again, Deshaun Watson for me, I don't think he's worth paying like a top 5 round pick for this year.
No, I mean, you can get him in like the 8th round.
We're getting to the zone of I waited on quarterback, and by the time you're taking Deshaun, he will last multiple rounds. So you're going to be towards the back end of people who take a quarterback in your league.
But Geek, he is a proactive pick. Like you were waiting on quarterback and it's like the 7th round and you have a feeling that someone else is going to take him, like it's okay to reach up around to take him. He's not like, I'll just take the next guy.
Yeah, you still want to actively grab him. So let's talk about the group that comes right after this. And for me, what I've done, so I think a lot of people, and again, rankings might differ, and I want to see where you're going with it because I'll give you my ranks and I'll tell you why, and then I want to see where you went with it. So for me, this is the point where I'm one of the last takers of a quarterback in my league already. I've waited. The rest of my team should be better than my league mates because I've got a positional advantage somewhere. But my quarterback's not looking so good. So here's my next group. I got number 10 overall. I've got Tua Tagovailoa. Number 11, Daniel Jones. And number 12, and I don't think you're going to like this one. Now, remember, that's number 12, meaning you are the last person. This is already round 10. And you will get another quarterback. But my number 12 is Anthony Richardson. And the reason I didn't think you'd like that one is just he's not going to be good in the beginning of the year. It's going to take a bit. But we might get something really good. RG3, year one. Like we might get that. The upside is at least there for a running quarterback.
Even Tim Tebow was a top 12 fantasy quarterback, and he was horrendous. It was just that running upside should make him comfortably a top 12 quarterback, Geek.
When you're taking that last spot, listen, you could take Dak, you can take Geno, Jared Goff is there, Aaron Rodgers. There are other names, Kirk Cousins, the yeoman-like, the aforementioned Phil Rivers clone from a few years back, like that last guy that is going to get you 16 to 18 fantasy points every week, consistent. I'm just thinking the reason I have an Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones ahead of all of those guys is because the upside is so much greater. Yeah. Like, what's the worst that happens? Richardson sucks. All right. I still have Geno. I took him later.
Well, here's what happens after Deshaun Watson. So in most leagues, you have about 6 bench spots. Some leagues now that we've expanded to about 8 bench spots. But when you're not taking one of the top 9, when you're taking one of those top 9, you're dedicating one roster spot to quarterback. Once you're outside of that top 9 or 10, I guess Tua kind of qualifies for that too. You're not going to take a second quarterback. But once you get into this Anthony Richardson tier, the upside's there, but you need to think to use another roster spot, which could be used for like an upside running back or tight end or receiver. So that's the opportunity cost. Yes, there is massive upside, and you've waited. You didn't spend a top 5 round pick on. You have all these nice running backs and receivers, but your upside on your bench, you're not going to be able to get some of the like Jerome Ford types or whoever your favorite sleepers are in the last round.
And I'll keep it real. I'm probably taking 2 backup quarterbacks if I have an Anthony Richardson as my prime.
Oh, in a best ball maybe, but not in a seasonal.
Even in a seasonal, depending on the league that you're in. I am absolutely in leagues where all of the quarterbacks get taken in seasonal, in Yahoo, like basic. Right. Because
if you have 6 bench spots, you're going to dedicate 3 of them to quarterback?
Two.
Right, but you know what I'm saying. So 3 total spots.
If it's 7 or 8, yeah, I would if I don't have a top tier quarterback, yes, because I want to give myself a few shots at it. But I might dump that person after 2 weeks if like my prime guy looks like he's got legs. If Anthony Richardson will ever get a start, you could dump. But like Anthony Richardson, when you're taking him, you're not even starting him week 1. You're taking him to put on your bench. So the next guy you take is your starter week 1, and you actually want to matchup base that. So I think having 2 is actually more beneficial, just for me personally, than having some backup running back that I have to wait for an injury. I would take the 2 quarterbacks if I go that route. If I get a top 9 quarterback, I don't need to do it. So that is the negative. Well, but I do think you'll be able to piece together something good.
Yeah, and in a single quarterback league, Anthony Richardson, no problem, right? Like you just said, you can dump him if it doesn't work out, or if he just looks horrendous and he's not scoring fantasy points. But what I recommend that people do, if you're going to take him, and you could take him as high as the 8th quarterback, I really wouldn't have a problem with it. There's just such nuclear upside. I mean, he put on another 11 pounds, so he's up to 255 now, Geek, and they say, and he looks even faster. I mean, just to give you perspective, Cam Newton, who was huge, right, was 235 pounds. Richardson is 20 pounds heavier. I like pairing Richardson with Dak, having that perfect floor-ceiling combo, or with Rodgers, who you could start, or any of those type of guys, or Geno. So take a floor and a ceiling guy like Richardson. It's a really great fantasy football strategy. I'm still shocked that you're taking a 3rd quarterback and spending that much draft capital.
Yeah, just because, like I said, those guys, especially that 3rd guy, Brock Purdy's available in the last round of your draft. Like those type of guys, yes, I would have the 3rd guy. But I'm less, like I said, I don't value every single bench spot the same way that you might. I'm just kind of like, I don't care about those backup running backs. I'll get them on the waivers if I have to, if I employ the strategy.
Here's the reason and the counterpunch to that. And what you're saying about using waivers for running backs, we could save this for the running back podcast, but if you can get those guys on your bench, you don't have to spend the fab and fight with everybody else, because you could spend $3 here, $8 there, but you play fantasy football on the waiver wire how I do. You know that you have the hammer twice. So you're going to spend $60 and $30. You get 2 shots at like getting that Elijah Mitchell type. And if you have that guy on your bench, you don't have to do that. And instead, a 3rd quarterback that you're going to probably drop anyway, you're really limiting that upside shot.
It's all, listen, I see the benefit to both approaches as long as you attack your approach in a strong way and like in a confident way. That's all I could say with it. Like, be confident about what you're doing. If I'm taking this late quarterback, especially if it's Richardson specifically, I'm just backing it up. I'm not sure. I'm worried about it. If I can get a second guy like Daniel Jones, then whatevs. But like if it's somebody who I don't think is a matchup-based quarterback like a Geno, I'd probably want a second
Goff,
matchup-based guy
Stafford.
like a Goff. Yeah. And those are just matchup-based guys, meaning you're just not playing them if it's a bad match. Like if it's not a good matchup, you're not playing that guy. You want to play someone else. Like if they're playing San Francisco, who else do I have available? I don't need to play this guy. All right. So that's your top 12 quarterbacks. Now, since a lot of the people who watch the show play do super flex, and we talked a little bit about some of the quarterbacks outside, give me a sleeper quarterback outside the top 12 or 13 or 14, as we mentioned a few other names. Like who's a sleeper you can get late, or that you're maybe targeting as your second QB in 2 QB leagues, or as a backup that you think has some serious upside, if you know, to take in even in a standard league.
Yeah, the player that I really think has an excellent chance to be a top 12 quarterback is Jordan Love.
Wow.
He's on the Green Bay Packers. Everyone thinks he sucks because he hasn't played, but when he's played, he's been okay. The guy in college also runs the football. I mean, you know, there was...
I'm not spreading that rumor. He's not such a runner. He's a minimal running.
Right. He's not a pocket passer, Tom Brady type like you identified before.
No,
like
he is not a runner.
He can move around a little bit. He can move. He could scramble around. I mean, almost like how Big Ben scrambled around a little bit, but he's an accurate passer. And also, when he played with when he played against the Eagles in Week 12, I mean, he had a great game. He found Christian Watson, who had a 100-yard-plus game, and he's been learning from Aaron Rodgers. He's been sitting on the bench for 3 years, former first-round pick. Now, is it guaranteed or high? I mean, I just think there's a pretty good chance that a player like this could turn out to be one of the answers in fantasy football, similar to like how Ryan Tannehill, everyone thought he sucked, and then he got his second chance with Tennessee and was like, oh, he was like QB8 that year or something like that. Same thing with Geno Smith. Everyone's like, oh, this guy sucks. But he had, and then all of a sudden he was a top 6 QB for the first half of the year. I think that Jordan Love could have a type of year like that where we look up at the end of September and he's like QB 11. You know, it's like, oh, okay. In my Superflex leagues, I didn't need to spend a high pick on him, or I have him as my third quarterback.
Listen, I don't disagree. I think he's got a lot of potential this year. I like the weapons. I don't love the weapons, but I like the weapons on the Packers and what they have left this year. So, yeah, I'm about it, dude. I don't mind that one. I'm going to say for me, if I'm picking a guy, and again, this is a very, very late round pick, just the upside play. I think CJ Stroud has me a little bit interested. And just, you know, he's outside of the top 20. He's outside of my top 20 rankings. But it's just a lot of the reasons that you just talked about. Kind of remember, listen, Houston's going to be behind. They have no defense on their team whatsoever. They don't even bother trying to stop the ball. That's number one. Number two, they have some interesting weapons. I just think they're going to be throwing a lot. I think they're going to be out there just behind and throwing the ball nonstop. And if he doesn't suck, you know, between Nico Collins and John Mechie and all of these guys over there, I think he might give us some running too. So I think CJ Stroud has a little bit of sneaky late season. We even saw Davis Mills, you know, a couple years ago in a similar offense do well. And we saw Deshaun Watson, who's a similar player. That's who you compare CJ Stroud to more often than not. And he had some great years with shitty Houston teams. So I don't see, I find it an interesting super late round pick. It's almost like Donkey because it's like so late that if it don't work out, who cares? It's still your last pick in your draft. Like he's. Do you like him?
Do you like him better than Bryce Young, the other rookie who was picked by the Carolina Panthers for fantasy?
Yes, I like him just a little bit ahead of Bryce Young. I think the Panthers are much more likely to lean on the run heavily this year, which is why I kind of like their running back. But we'll get to that on the running back.
Here, I'll say this about CJ Stroud to support your argument. He's not losing the job. If you're in that zone of quarterbacks at the end of the draft, like Baker Mayfield, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, like they could lose their job in the middle of the season.
Jimmy Garoppolo, he's getting hurt.
Garoppolo, he could lose his job also. Even Russell Wilson has some job risk because they brought in Jarrett Stidham. The one thing you could say is that CJ Stroud, if healthy, and hopefully he will be, is going to be playing in all 17 football games. Even if they're 0-16 heading into week 17, he's playing the full game.
100%. You're getting your starts out of him, and you're getting him. I mean, he's outside of the top 24, so that is a bargain price to get for a quarterback. All right, that's going to do it for the QB breakdown. Seslowski, check him out at RotoWire. video, YouTube, all that good stuff.
By the way, let the audience know that, put in the comments who you think the best sleeper QBs are, because if you have someone that we haven't talked about yet, we want to know. We want to know for our leagues too. So help us out. Put in the comments where you're taking a quarterback this year and who are your sleeper QBs for 2023.
100%. And if you're right and you nail it, we'll come back. We'll bring you on the show next year.
No, we won't.
No, we won't. We'll totally forget. We won't know who you are.